Welcome to the Wedding Songs Podcast, featuring newly released songs you need to know and the tried and true classics. Get song ideas from the time guests arrive until the last dance of the reception. And now your host, Matt Campbell, founder of MyWeddingSongs.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wedding Songs Podcast. I am Matt Campbell. Today, we have a very special guest, singer-songwriter Shane Alexander. He's based in California, but has traveled the world as a musician. Welcome to the show, Shane.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm stoked for this podcast today because having somebody that's performed at weddings, and that always excites me.
Well, it's definitely something that's happened for sure.
Very cool. So just to break the ice a little bit, can you just share some of your artists that have been a mentor to you through the years?
Artists that have been a mentor personally, or just artists that have been an inspiration?
Yeah, inspiration is better.
Yeah. I guess first and foremost, I have to pledge my allegiance to Neil Young, who is, I always refer to him as the source, just simply because of his purity and his ability to kind of stick to the muse and really trust the gut and be himself. I saw him when I was a teenager in Hollywood. He was solo acoustic, and that really sort of changed the trajectory of my life. I was always a fan, but seeing him live there with solo acoustic and 9,000 people was really an eye-opener. And then, years later, I got to play there myself. And last year I met Neil and I told him the story, which was pretty cool. So, early on, Simon and Garfunkel, Cat Stevens, the Beatles, and things like that. In my teens, I was a total metalhead hard rocker. And then kind of later, full circle, came back to the more sort of songwriter stuff of my formative years. Also, Moody Blues and Black Sabbath get mentioned for sure. Very important to me, both of them.
That's cool that you have transitioned to, the singer-songwriter to the metal, back to that. So I'm sure that having that wide variety of musicians in that collection has really shaped what you put out.
Absolutely. First and foremost, I am like a real bona fide music fan. And so I'm either making music or listening to music constantly, always, always, always. And, in the advent of streaming, it's even more accessible. Of course, we all had big record collections and stuff going into that. But now for $10 a month, you can have everything, which is a pretty sweet deal for the consumer. But also for me as an artist and as a record producer, I just love to hear new sounds. I love to hear old sounds. I just love to see how the pieces fit together. Also I came up during the time of MTV where it was anything goes. Just the song had to be good. So genre, you could go from Flock of Seagulls to AC/DC to Iron Maiden to Cyndi Lauper, and it was great. And so I have that, which was also really a big inspiration. At that point, I was already playing guitar and stuff, but I've just always been drawn to music and performance and visuals and things like that. And so now, about 10 years ago, I built a studio and I produce other artists. And so it's just kind of full circle. And also, I went from my first bands were total rock and metal bands to being totally solo acoustic. And now my music is sort of a hybrid that, again, you bring Neil Young into the mix. He's both a folky and the loudest guitarist on earth, and so that's all very relatable.
Cool. You've touched base a little bit on this. Just for the people that don't know who you are, can you just introduce yourself? Who is Shane Alexander?
Well, I'm a solo artist. I have 8 solo records. I've been in bands forever. I've been a session musician for a long, long time. I'm also a producer. This next month will be the 20th anniversary of my touring overseas. I went to Holland in, actually, it was early November of 2005. And so I've been an independent full-time artist for the last 19 years, which is not for the faint of heart, but it's been really lovely and the universe has come through. And before I went full-time, I was always in bands, but my last day job was I worked for Irving Azoff, who's an absolute music mogul. He was is a huge music manager. He's been doing the Eagles since the 70s. He was the head of MCA. He's the head of Frontline. He invested in many of the biggest venues in Los Angeles and stuff. He's a bona fide mogul, but I worked for him for 10 years as sort of an office assistant, sometimes mailroom, and then the sort of liaison between the office and the artists. So during that time, I had this really unbelievable direct access to like icons, in their homes and stuff. And
Yeah.
so that was really, really cool too, and really informative, and so many takeaways from that, but one of the big ones, particularly being around the Eagles so much, I was at their homes, I was at their rehearsals, and, I thought, wow, this is the ultimate top of the food chain. Not a lot of levity up here. Everybody's pretty serious, except Joe Walsh could be comic relief from time to time. But it was just a really interesting sort of to be in that world and be accepted because I was from The Office and stuff like that. And also the Van Halen brothers, I spent a lot of time with them at Ed's studio, and same thing, just to be around that, was really informative. And so basically when I left, they weren't really happy with me leaving. It was kind of like leaving the mob because I had such access. It's like, oh, you're leaving, but I had toured with Jewel, the year before. I did 2 tours with her, and they were quite lucrative and quite fulfilling. And I was playing by myself for like 1 to 3,000 people and really going over and selling a ton of merch. And that was just the push. And so in 2006, with my wife's approval and a new baby at home, I quit my day job. Yeah. And so, yeah, now my daughter's 19, and I've performed in about 14 countries and put out 8 records, and produced another 10 or so records and another 50 singles or something. And, I'm really blessed. I'm super hardworking, but it's great.
Yeah, it's great to hear the success stories because we always hear so many artists don't even get 10 plays a month. So I think it's fantastic to hear the success stories too. And maybe we'll get to it in just a minute, but it would be nice to say, or maybe I'll get to it now. What tips would you have for those artists that are trying to make it?
Well, years ago, I was asked to do a master class in Europe, and it was about being a quote successful indie. And I touched on everything from, sessions to befriending the sound guy to co-writing to publishing, whatever. The 3 legs of the stool are don't suck, don't quit, and make friends, and most people get at least one of those wrong. You have to really make and maintain relationships. You have to know when you're not up to code and be realistic about that, and again, study the greats and put yourself against them. And to a fault, I'm mercilessly, hard on myself, but it's because all of my heroes are badass, awesome artists that really, they gave it 100%. And particularly in the modern world where digital technologies and stuff can finish your sentences literally for you, but at the same time, they can correct everything. So where the rubber meets the road is you out in front of an audience. Can you put on a compelling performance, And so, again, I was fortunate to go out with, I toured with Jewel, and I toured with Seal. I did a whole national tour with Styx and Yes, and, Suzanne Vega and Bon Iver, and I've gotten to open for a lot of really amazing artists. But I just, I just try to hold myself really accountable. And for me, if people are buying my records or people are paying to my shows, like I want them to go home super. They came out into the night, I take it very seriously. And another thing is, like, a fan is a beautiful thing to be fed and watered and appreciated forever. And so many times it's even, the one of the origin stories of Flaming Lips was like some fan like really stepped up and helped get them going in the beginning, and so now that I've been touring internationally for so long, I'm hearing from people all over the planet pretty much daily, and I'm still obviously a humble independent, but the beauty, again, coming out of working for Irving Azoff's office and stuff, was this around 2006 to 8 or something. There was sort of a gold rush of my contemporaries where we took the indie thing and we ran with it, and we're like, okay, we're going to be autonomous now. And so I was very fortunate to license a lot of music to film and TV, and I own all my masters and I own all my publishing and things like that. Those are also really important. But the main thing of don't suck, don't quit, and make friends, I think that's everything.
I was going to say every business could take those notes for sure.
Mhm.
Even I could.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really can be a very thankless business. The money rarely correlates to the effort and the time. Another thing is, I think a lot of kids today get into stuff because they want to be famous. Famous is not a destination. If you're particularly as a creative, if you don't do it because you love it, then do something else. There was a quote from Dennis Hopper, and he's like, if you can live without your art, just stop, don't even bother, And so that's the thing. I'm definitely a lifer. I definitely love it. I love to travel. I love to see life through the lens of like the observer on the train or whatever. And also, I'm a family guy, I've been married
Mhm.
24 years and I'm a dad. And so to balance those two worlds is insane with a capital I, and I've
Yeah.
managed to make that go too. And I just believe that you can have it all if you put in the effort. And so always trying to keep those things in balance is sort of the crux of my life. And the last couple of years, I haven't toured as heavily as I might have previously, but I still do enough that I love it. This year is the first year in a while that I'm not going to Europe, but usually I go every fall. I've been over, maybe 25 times or something. Yeah.
I hear a humbleness to your voice and to your stories too. So I think that's also very important. No matter how big we get, famous doesn't make you happy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing, truthfully, working again for all with Irving and so many of those artists. I was alone in Christina's house. I saw Christina, this is, 20 years ago, just kind of at the peak of her fame, like alone in her home playing Xbox. I was like, wow, she's
Mhm.
just like the princess in the tower. And, I had to take her dinner one night and I thought, oh, wow, this doesn't seem all that glamorous. It's just like the bigger you get, the more isolated you become. And, relationships and again, real life, you can really get out of sync with real life. Just touring in general, I always say it's like a werewolf kind of life, particularly, when you go to Europe and you're 9-hour time difference from home and
Mhm.
things can get weird and, the home can get pissy and you can get lonely and all the things. It's such a trope, of the musician on the road and, and I just didn't want to kind of fall into those things. And I was really grateful to have a good thing at home. And so I want both. I want a career and I want to keep the home fires burning.
Wedding DJs and wedding pros, are you ready to elevate your expertise and keep the dance floor packed? Introducing the Wedding Music Letter, your weekly email written by me, Matthew Campbell, packed with exclusive insights and inspiration. Every Wednesday, I deliver curated playlists, deep dives into wedding and music industries, and practical tips on topics like science of creating a playlist, managing decibel levels, and crafting unforgettable parent dances. Stay informed, stay inspired. Subscribe to the Wedding Music Letter and bring the best music moments to life at every wedding. Sign up today at weddingmusicletter.com. The Wedding Music Letter, expert insights every Wednesday straight to your inbox at weddingmusicletter.com. Now back to the show. Well, let's get more into your music because you recently released the Forever songs back in April. Now that it's out worldwide, what has the reception been and what are you most proud of from the project?
Well, yes, it's my eighth record. My last three records I self-produced here at my studio, which is called Budaland. The response has been great. NPR featured the record, which was really cool. I got very good response in press and magazines and stuff like that. I haven't like licensed anything yet that I can think of. And for me, a lot of the songs that have become successful for me were licensed, and that was what got them in front of a big audience, and they became sort of evergreen in that regard. But yeah, this record was sort of special in that I had started it a couple of years ago, and then my phone really started ringing to produce people, and I needed the wages to keep the chimney smoking and to fund my own record and my own press and my own all the things. And so I did the basic tracks with my guys, and then I had to kind of put it away for almost 2 years. And then when I came back, I produced maybe 3 records in the interim and a bunch of singles. And I thought that ended up ultimately being a gift because I got to really come back to it with fresh perspective. But yeah, a lot of the songs on this record came out of, in the pandemic, the times we should not mention. I had a sort of a gold rush of co-writing on Zoom when things were just completely ground to a stop and everybody was freaking out. I didn't really know what else to do. My kid was home doing homeschool, school on Zoom. She was in middle school, and so I hung out with my daughter a lot, but I wasn't doing a lot of shows, obviously some live streamy things. And so I always give credit my friend Ted Russell Camp, who's a really accomplished artist and bassist and producer himself. We've written a bunch of songs together, and he reached out to write remotely. And And initially, I didn't want to do it because we spent great expense to build this studio, but we wrote on our phones on FaceTime. And then the next week, we moved it to Zoom. And then he and I think ultimately wrote 10 songs, but we started to meet every week. And then out of that, I decided to fill my calendar and I did 5 sessions a week and I co-wrote 85 songs with friends all over the world. And that was just a really wonderful, beautiful exercise. And so, like, You Make Your Own Luck is the first song on the record. I wrote that with Danny McGaw. And some of the songs came out of those. And then a lot of the songs came out of just being home alone and sort of alienated from everybody. The song Autumn Blue was, specifically remember that one because I was walking my dog and it was the autumn of 2020. And I thought, wow, this is a sucky time in civilization. I better write a song about it. And I really felt like I captured what I was going for. And then again, to answer your question, I guess Higher Than High is the last song on the record. And that one is probably my favorite because I feel like it encapsulates kind of the whole of me, from the sort of open tuney, stony David Crosby chords of the verses to the big trafficked Jeff Beck Pink Floyd outro. And so basically I got all my stuff in there and I wrote that one alone. And again, as a producer, there's times where I really feel like it's a gift where I hear a finished record before we start, and so it can take, months or a couple years or whatever, sometimes from the time I hear it to the time it's really there. And that is always a very special and emotional moment, particularly when there's something that I heard it done, even the saxophone solo. And then when I finally got that, it was the last piece of the puzzle to that song. And when I heard it, I'm like, holy crap, there it is. It's miraculous. And so, at this point, again, this is my 8th solo record. I'm a grown ass man. I've been doing it a minute. I don't, there's nothing external that I'm doing it for. I don't even care about genre. I don't care about anything. I care about like honoring the muse and keeping the standard high. And that was really what I was trying to do with this record, and I'm really proud of it. And again, tons of great musicians are with me on it, and Justine Bennett and Jamie Drake are both great artists, but they sing backups with me for many years, and so a lot of the girls' vocals are absolutely beautiful. My band crushed it, and there's a few special guests. I mentioned the saxophone. Tommy Schneller is an accomplished guy from Germany. Chris Pierce played harmonica on the first song. And it's just beautiful to make music with your friends. It's lovely to be able to do it here in my own space. To self-produce is a little bit of looking into the looking glass, which can be a mind melter. But yeah, it's just about sort of, again, trusting the muse and like it'll tell me when it's done. And so having the luxury of time to, again, come back to it with a fresh ear and land the plane ended up being really great.
That's so awesome. And everybody can listen to it on any favorite platform, music platform.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I just want to say real quick is I don't ever worry about genres anymore because in our age, I consider it genreless because so much music is crossed over into so many genres now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I was going to say, like David Bowie and John Lennon are also 2 really big pillars in my life. And you can't really put either of them in a box, from Mind Games to Working Class Hero to, Heroes to Young Americans. It's a pretty big swing, and so all of that music is in my body and my father's record collection and things like that. So, we're all just taking in all this information all the time, and we're just kind of filtering through our influences and our own life experience. And that's where the real stuff happens. I actually just saw Rufus Wainwright last week, and I've been a fan of his forever, but he was solo at the Libby Bowl up in Ojai, and I was just marveling that, like, just with his piano chords, his melodic choices, you get history, you get cabaret, you get places, because it's all baked into him. His father was a touring musician, he comes from a musical family. All of this stuff it's in the chords, I just thought that was so interesting that he did one song where he literally played the whole song all with his left hand on piano. It was his vocal and his left hand. And again, so evocative, like you're in places, you're in moods, and that's just the beauty of music. And that's why I'm always going to be a purveyor of the real, where obviously the temptation now, I have tons of professional friends, Grammy-winning pals, hitting me all the time, asking my thoughts on this advent of AI and these programs that now you can speak in your voice text and like it'll not only spit out a record, it'll spit out of stems. So there's the hi-hat, there's the guitar player, there's the bass player that never exist, you know. And so again, I'm a studio owner, I'm part of the LA music scene, and I really it's very, very important to me to keep humanity and the arts and music, you know. And so also as a producer, my job is to try to bring out the best in the artist and put a frame around them to present to the world, you know. And so as things are getting more diluted, and that's what I see with all of this, you know, digital interface, it is going to dilute individuality. You know, there's just no way it can't. And so that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking with Rufus. I'm like, God, it's so pure. I'm like, he's not collaborating with his phone to write these songs. He's pouring his out into the piano, you know? And so that's what, same thing with Neil Young. I just saw he did Farm Aid 2 nights ago, and I think he turns 80 this week. And he said a really pointy political song, and he's playing loud and doing all this stuff. And you're like, it's so beautiful because he's he's honoring the muse, man. He's keeping it real. He's reminding us if you're going to be an artist, be real. I don't fault anybody for straight pop music that's confectionery or whatever, but that's not what I got into it for, you know?
Yeah, so much storytelling in that music. And as a friend says, buy the ticket because there's nothing like live music.
Yeah. And, you know, the other night, I mentioned it was Farm Aid. My friend Chris texted me. He goes, "Hey, I'm watching Bob Dylan." I thought he was at the show. And then he sent me the link. It was live streaming on YouTube. You know, I missed Bob Dylan, but we caught Neil, and Willie closed. And, you know, Willie's in his 90s.
Wow.
And his
Yeah.
sons were there, and he had a little band, and same thing. He was so composed and cool and wise, and, you know, there's just he's irreplaceable. And he's literally had a lifetime of performing and doing the thing, and there's really nothing that compares to that, and that's always my goal. I wanna be, you know, the youngest 95-year-old artist ever and doing the thing, you know? It's very cool, and, you know, over the years, like so many of my friends and experience, everything is directly related to my music career, you know, like all of my giant experience, meeting my wife, everything, you know, comes back to music. So I'm forever grateful, and I always want to pay it forward.
So when you're writing songs that become popular wedding songs, or are you thinking that these are great elements of a wedding song? I should just keep running with that. What's your thought process as a writer?
Well, you know, I've never specifically written for a wedding song. I have a song called Front
Right.
Porch Serenade, it's
Yeah.
a very simple kind of old-timey, love song that I wrote for the wife. Been flown to England to sing that. I did it at a beautiful mountaintop in Malibu, you know, up in San Francisco. It's just a simple, sweet, honest sentiment that was a truthful love song. I just kinda dressed it up like an old-timey story, but yeah, I write a lot of love songs, and I'm a terribly romantic guy. And again, sometimes obviously I do co-writing. I do a lot of co-writing, and sometimes we can write a love song from zero or that's not based in a real story or whatever. But you know, you're trying to really get real heart and real emotion in there, and that's always what I'm shooting for. But that song that I've been asked to do at so many weddings, you know, was just written. It just came out, you know, and
Yeah.
when my daughter was born, I always remember, you know, again, my daughter's 19 now, and it was like a planned, you know, we were on the schedule. And so my wife and I went to the hospital early in the morning, and I think it had just come out, or maybe it wasn't even released yet, but my wife actually put it on in the car, and we listened to it before we went in to have our kid. And in one of the lyrics is going to have us a child, we'll be happy all the while, you know? And so when I'm far from home, like that song always really does connect me to my girls, you know, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You never know how it's going to be received or whatever. I've had people told me that they listened to that, you know, in the room when they were having their baby and things like that, you know. So it's always an honor to be part of the soundtrack of somebody's big moment.
And both of us listen to a lot of music. I think both of us can say too that you can have the greatest wedding song, the greatest love song. If the artist doesn't put the emotion into the song, it's a dud.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. You know, again, that comes back to coming from a real place. You know, the best music that makes your hair stick up is human. And, you know, it always comes back to like Joni Mitchell or something, you know. Obviously she's got a godly voice, but her stuff was tracked the old fashioned way. You know, a lot of those classics are her and a guitar or her and a dulcimer or something. And it's just so pure that I just think on a purely vibrational level, we respond to it, you know. And at the same time, in this digital age, the more digital stuff that happens between the recording and the finish line, the less you're going to have a visceral reaction on the receiving end. It might rock the club, but on a, like an emotional level, where it's the temptation is so strong to tune it, to quantize it, to this, that. Suddenly the humanity is really getting squeezed out, it's a
Great.
slippery slope.
Now you have many songs, of course, like you said, throughout this your decades of careers now. Do you have any favorite stories about music being used in TV or films or?
Sure, there's a few. One of the juiciest ones was a show called Bones on Fox. That was a lucrative placement, and it was also someone from Fox. Hi, Elaine. She's no longer there, but she was then. Was at a show, so it didn't come through an agent, which was also nice because there was not a middleman fee. But what was so cool was it was an end of the episode montage, so there was no talking, and I had basically their audience to myself for whatever 3.5 minutes or something. And so that was also very evergreen. It's still paying me now after whatever 15 years or something. And also I go out into the world and people, I was in Amsterdam, like I produced a girl over there, and we were like trying to be under the radar, and we like kind of crashed this open mic thing, and we went on last. And I played another song, Feels Like the End, and there was a woman there from Hungary, and she came up, she goes, I heard that song on the show. Like I know that song from the show. And I'm like, wow, that's really amazing. Yeah, another song, Feels Like the End, was on a show called White Collar. It's been on, that song's been in about 15 things, but it's again sort of evergreen, and it's just it's a very dark, strong sentiment. And so a lot of these shows have their own like proper rabid fan bases and stuff. I mean, Shipwrecked again was on Bones, and that has had about 10 million YouTube views of fan-made content. Not even my own stuff. I only realized that about 1.5 years ago. I'm like, holy hell, what's that all about? But a lot of it, again, is driven by film and TV. And that song was before even Shazam was a thing. So people had to like literally start digging into the internet and find me and stuff. Now, of course, Shazam is the thing. And, through my Apple, I can see, I've had, I'm trying to remember, but around maybe 200,000 Shazams out in the wild, which is really cool. And you never know. And I'm the same way. If I'm at a restaurant, I'm like, oh, this song's cool, I will grab it and bring it with me. And that's kind of how we work now. But Shipwrecked and Feels Like were both really, really great. I had a song called Everything As One. In the pandemic, my 7th record, A Life Like Ours, had come out right before the pandemic. And so that record kind of didn't really have a chance of getting all the press and that normally I would get. But I did get a Chevrolet commercial in, I guess late 2020, early 2021, particularly when we needed it desperately. Things were dry, and out of the clear blue sky, this happened. And that was so random because I thought that song was really an odd duck. I wrote it with my friend Rich Jacks, and we were doing sort of a psychedelic George Harrison-y, mantra-y kind of thing. And of all things, for it to be a Chevrolet commercial just seemed random, a gift nonetheless, but random. But that was lovely because that was my first national commercial. And, that was obviously a little bit of money. And also my backup singer, she got 5 figures as well. So everybody was lean. It was a gift, so we're always welcoming, open to receive such nuggets from the universe.
For some reason, I'm thinking of Like a Rock by Bob Seger being,
Absolutely,
the truck commercial. And you're thinking, he never thought this was going to be a truck commercial, I'm sure.
Yeah. I would often bring him up on stage after that song was on TV, and I'm like, it's nice to be in that company with him. I don't imagine we got the same deal. Even in the 80s or whenever his song was, I'm sure we didn't get the same deal. But it was still great to be in such company with an iconic American brand for sure. It was really cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's again, once your music leaves the house, once it's out there, like you have no idea where it's going to turn up. And so that's why it behooves you, A, to do your best putting it down, and B, to, blow on the embers and spend some money on publicity and things like that. Just to hope all of my songs that have taken off, I have a song called Skyway Drive-In that somehow the Spotify gods got a hold of, and they featured it. And, it had been out for 2 years before that happened, and now it's got like 15 million plus streams or something. And I thought it was a mistake when it started cranking. I'm like, what's happening? What is this? And And again, it had been out for a while. And that's even rarer still because often, they want the new stuff for the playlist or this, And so, but I was really proud of it when I wrote it. And that's a really personal song to me. And I recorded it live. I actually recorded with one microphone. And for that song to go so well out in the universe also was really gratifying and lovely and a little bread for the family and all the things. So, again, just trying to keep the standard high, keep my name in the paper. I'm always very active in the scene, particularly Los Angeles and Holland. I know as many Dutch musicians as I do Americans. And so it's just lovely. I have so many brothers and sisters in arms that are doing their best, touring the world, filming TV, whatever, just trying to keep the thing going. And yeah, it is really challenging, and the money rarely correlates to the amount of effort or talent. It's just, it's luck of the draw. And again, just meeting people and really taking care of your relationships. And you're like, oh, I just thought of the thing that would be perfect for you, And so you just never know when the red phone is going to light up. But in this business, when it does, you answer it,
Yeah, I could do a TikTok of one of your songs, and you're like, why is this blowing up from TikTok? What's the start of this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're saying, that could be 15 years later.
Yeah. That reminded me, I totally forgot about it. Yeah. About 5-6 years ago, I had done a cover of The Funeral by Band of Horses. My friend Justine, who I mentioned, she sings backup with me, but she's one of my dearest friends. And we've released 2 singles together as like a duo, and they're both covers. And so we did a cover of The Funeral, really sad, pretty one. But there was this fireman, and it was an early TikTok, and he had like kind of thought bubbles. He was pointing to the bubble. It's like, you didn't see when I found the dead child, or you didn't see when I found the mother in the car, or whatever. And he was using my song, our song. And yeah, it got hundreds of thousands of spins. And also other people started to use his format. So they took the song and they made their own videos similarly. And so just, again, random as the day is long, but still really cool.
The check's got a couple extra zeros on it. You're trying to figure out why.
Good things happen. Yeah.
The universe is good sometimes, for sure.
Absolutely.
So is there something we missed that you wanted to share with our audience?
Well, I guess, again, we're in the love song space. We're in the wedding song space. As an artist, for me, I've been a Buddhist for coming up on 28 years. And I really believe in kind of using the microphone for good. Whatever your vocation is, use your gifts to, for the betterment of humanity. These are weird times, and I think it's a time to be a little bit more tolerant, a little more patient, a little bit more open-minded, and don't despair. Enjoy what there is to enjoy. Be a cool person out there in the world, and keep swinging. That's all I got.
We always say, just be kind. It all starts there.
Yeah.
So where can listeners connect with you and find you?
I'm easy to find. Shane Alexander Music is my website. Shane Alexander Music is my handle on the socials, Insta and Facebook and things like that. I am on all your streaming things. Christmas is coming. Vinyl is a wonderful gift. Get Forever songs on vinyl. Lots of merch and nuggies on Shane Alexander Music. And yeah, if you find my music and connects with you, drop me a line. I love to hear from folks all the time.
It's fantastic. Well, thanks again, Shane, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Honored that you're here.
My
Love
pleasure.
the story.
Thanks to Brant for introducing us, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks for Brant for introducing us. And make sure you tune in to Brant's episode before this one as well. Stay tuned for another episode of the Wedding Songs Podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Songs Podcast. Never miss a future episode. Subscribe today to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook at My Wedding Songs and send us a message about playlists you would like covered.